Welcome to the Money Maven Project podcast. If you're here to learn how to obtain freedom over your time and money through real estate investing, you're in the right place. Create the life you want by living with intention and becoming a Maven in mindset, money, and real estate. Now, here's your host, Justin Monk.
Hey, this is Justin Monk with the Money Maven Project podcast. I am super excited today. We've got Jamie Gruber on the phone here, on the screen with us, whatever it is. And I'm super excited. I've been wanting to get Jamie on the podcast for a bit now, and we finally got it lined up. So Jamie, welcome. Why don't you give us a rundown of your where you come from, how you got into real estate and where you're at today?
Yeah, man, no, appreciate being on. I always enjoy connecting with people. And I think we have a mutual friend with Austin Linney. And you know, if Austin Linney says, check this guy out, then I got to check this guy out. So I'm excited to be here, man. I appreciate the opportunity. So my story, I kind of a standard upbringing. I grew up in New York, upstate New York mostly, and, follow the regular path, go to high school, go to college, although I never finished college, just never valued it, get a job, which I ended up getting, which I got a job that required college, but just figured out a way to get in without the degree, and, get married, have kids, and that's it. That's, by 27, it's figured out. Life is done. You just live that out for the remaining 70 years of your life and, hopefully die happy. That's kind of the model that I was brought up under. And I think a lot of people are, to be honest with you.
Right.
So for me, I got this job in insurance claims. I was a claims adjuster at 21 years old, and I was pretty good at it. I interacted pretty well with people. I was great in the negotiation space. The pace of this particular company's, how they managed the role, it fit me. It was really fast and quick and yada, yada, yada. So I did that. I moved up pretty quickly to a supervisory level and then later to a manager level. And this was all in New York. Eventually moved to Boston with the company, taking a promotion, and had eyes on this executive level job the entire time. Like, man, that's the spot. Big bonus, equity, everything I could ever want, big salary, the whole nine. And I really designed everything around trying to get there. I interviewed in every state. It didn't matter. Indiana, sure. New Jersey, sure. Texas, sure. And turned down until eventually I got the job in Michigan, and I moved my family here in 2017 for the job I wanted, the job I got. And, there's a relocation that goes with that. There's time to settle in, meet new people. So after about 30 days, I had the job. I had everything I wanted. And then it was just this weird internal hollow feeling that I had in my chest around like, is this really what I wanted? And it took a moment of me reflecting back and looking at my life and saying, man, I bet you a couple of years ago, I started to disconnect from what my job was. Great job, great company, nothing against it at all. But I felt like the void would be filled if I just accelerated my career path. And when I got to the destination I thought I wanted, I learned that wasn't it at all. It was something else. Didn't know exactly what. But right around that time as well, I read a book many of us know called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that little purple and yellow book. And I actually reread it. I was 21 when I read it the first time. And it was like, oh, that's nice. And then I was 37 when I read it the second time. And it's like, okay, now I get it. Now I understand all this passive income and all of that stuff. And I started really going down the path of saying, you know what, this real estate thing, I think this is where I can build passive income and equity and wealth and everything else for me to exit my day job one day. So I had a single family kind of as an accidental landlord situation. I sort of made that an asset, bought a couple more duplexes, joined a mastermind for multifamily, met my partner. We bought a 16 unit, bought a 22 unit, and we're kind of there now and always looking to grow. But it was really real estate for me, at least when I jumped into it, was the means to an end of finding fulfillment versus just paycheck and status at specific W-2 job. And that's what real estate, the intention of it was, I guess you could say.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. And so today, you ended up, tell us the rest of the story with that job. You ended up walking away from it, quitting that job and going full-time into real estate. What was that transition like?
Yeah, it's funny. Yes and no. So I did quit the job. I didn't go full-time into real estate. I quit. So right now I quit the job. We're mid-2021. I quit the job in early 2021. And that was a big deal. I was there 21 years. There was unvested equity left on the table, quite a bit.
Yeah.
that I was just going to lose the moment I walked away, right? That's that golden handcuffs you hear about. It's
Yep.
it's pay, it's bonus. But when the equity vests, like, it's always a fishing line with the toy on it at the end, and there's no way to catch it kind of thing. That's that golden handcuff that I had to unshackle from. And it was scary and all of that. But it's funny, real estate was what I started with. Real estate was awesome, is awesome. I love what it does from a wealth building perspective. But I learned about myself, and it was hard to admit this because I was so all in, and every conversation I had was, dude, you got to learn about real estate. Then I learned about multifamilies. Like, do you understand how valuations are done? Cap rate, formulaic. Oh my God, it's incredible. So my whole identity was moving toward being this operator. And then I learned I don't like operating. I don't like being a real estate operator, right? So what I did like, though, was I loved the interactions around it. I got, like I just said, I had passion around talking to other investors, learning what they're doing, understanding their story, how they did it. So that led to building a meetup group that we called Multifamily and More. And that meetup group served to fill a bit of a void that I had, that I mentioned, that emptiness in my chest. Like, real estate was a great distraction, but really what I enjoyed was really community around real estate more than just real estate itself. Love real estate for what it is, but property manager, you do all that stuff. I'll call you once a month and let me know if anything's blowing up. But I love the community aspect. That led to me being I'm part of a mastermind called Gobundance. It's a high net worth men's mastermind. And in that, they saw me with this community called Multifamily and More and said, man, we want to build a community for Gobundance that serves the folks that aren't at $1 million yet. They aren't at that net worth yet. That's required to get to Gobundance. Do you want to build that? And I said, oh, all day. I love this community thing. And now it was not just real estate, but I could talk about mindset and goal setting and really the stuff I love. So that was my exit. That was when I formed that part of the company, part of Gobundance, and started to see the results that people were getting from going through what we put together with our programs with Gobundance. That combined with my real estate holdings was for me to say, you know what? I'm not where I want to be. Like, the ideal would be, here's how much I make right now, and I build everything up to be like this much or more before I walk away. And you just sort of step from here over to here. There's no turbulence. It's an easy, there's a bridge across it. It's like I was here and, I'm here walking away, but it was time for me to take a bet on me and lean into purpose, lean into passion. And that's really my exit. Real estate I have, and we continue to look for it. But that's a small percentage of time that I spend. It's mostly on community.
This is so interesting because, so earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned that you thought this executive job, this executive position was going to fill the void. You said the word void there. So now, full circle, you have found this Gobundance, this helping others out, this community around that idea as filling that void. Is that what I'm hearing as a story here?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's for sure. It's for sure an on purpose feeling when I'm working in that environment. And it just wasn't anymore at my day job. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about, and this is funny because this podcast is about real estate, but we always end up talking more about the mindset around success and living a full life, which I love. I actually love the direction we always tend to go, because ultimately I think that you can read a bunch of books about syndicating multifamily deals, but if you have a mindset that's not healthy or that's a roadblock more than a help is to you, you're going to struggle no matter what. So I love to focus on this. But to tell us more about the void or the feelings that you felt around, once you finally get this executive job, like what were you still kind of feeling? Give us a little bit more light around that topic.
Yeah. First, on your point about mindset, I don't know any investor that's in the real estate space, and I network with a ton of them. That's my friend circle in many ways.
Yeah.
A lot of real estate investors that is not heavily invested in personal development mindset. Like they don't read, how to save money and taxes on real estate as much as they read, Think and Grow Rich, as they read, self-development books, those sort of, Napoleon Hill, anything like that.
Yeah.
So completely on board with you on that.
Yeah.
So that void, this is going to be a little bit deep, but when I think back to who I truly am, I really believe that, everything routes back to when you're growing up, to your childhood, to your teenage years, to your formative years, right? And for me back then, my dream was to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be an NFL sportscaster in the booth calling the games. Right? That was my dream and my vision. And I did some stuff with that, not quite that level, but I had a local radio show that I was on. I went and got my broadcaster's license. I even started to study it a little bit in college and everything. And I went away from it only because it was something that I wanted to graduate college and be in the NFL booth. I didn't want to go to middle of nowhere, Iowa for the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. shift for $18 for the day, on WIAAA and do the classical music, segment or whatever. I didn't want to put in the work to be the NFL broadcaster, but there was something in that was authentically me. I love presenting and entertaining and inspiring and just telling stories. I love telling stories. So watching the game and being able to articulate that to somebody, that's what was compelling to me. But I didn't realize that at the time. So I pursued this corporate career. And along the way, when I hit my late 20s and early 30s, you get into that quarter life, third life crisis kind of thing. And, there was something like stand-up comedy. I'm like, let me go do that. So I went and did stand-up comedy for a little bit, just open mics, nothing big. But I remember at the time thinking I'm 30 years old. Am I going to quit my job and go be a stand-up comic or whatever? I'm 30. What am I supposed to do at 30? So as I'm approaching 40, 36, 37, 38, I believe for anybody out there that's in that same age range, like late 30s, early 40s, I believe that that's a point in life when you start to realize how fast it goes. So when you're 20, 30 is forever away. It's like 30 is adulthood, right?
Oh, yeah.
You hit 30 and you realize that you're still 20. Right? When you hit 30, you haven't figured anything out. You're still 20. But 40 is kind of like farther away. Then you hit 40 and you're like, 80's coming. 80's like right there. It's coming. I don't feel old, but you have just more perspective. And I can imagine at 50 and at 60, things are going to shift for me.
Yeah.
So when I got to that late 30s, early 40s, it was a revelation to me that I had modified so much in my life in the interest of what others would think, in the interest of perception, in the interest of imposter syndrome, in the interest of other forces dictating how I should live my life. Like, how could I go be a stand-up comic? I don't even want to do that, to be honest with you. But how can I go do that at 30? You're a 30-year-old man. At 40, I'm looking at the 30-year-old like you were a child. You're a baby. Like, you have so much life to live. So I think I just got to a point in my late 30s where this internal dialogue, this internal authenticity I'm becoming more of myself as you age. Like, you just don't care as much about what other people think. This internal authenticity and dialogue was just swelling and building and knocking on me. Like, dude, I've been telling you for years, this is you. You don't want to talk about loss severity on GM parts over the last year trending up $8. Like, you don't care about that stuff right now, right? You want to be out in front. You want to talk to people. You want to meet people. You want to connect. Like, that's where your gift is. That's what you're all about. So I think it was just living inauthentically for so long. And there's a point at which, when we all go through it, that the ego had to die, and it did so violently. And a new identity or a rebirth of an old identity, even like my authenticity had to come shining through. So that's that feeling of emptiness. And like for 2017, sleepless nights, I remember thrashing in bed, just sweating, like in the middle of the night, like get up and go downstairs. I don't want to wake my wife kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt it was such an amazing thing happening inside of me, this battle of who I truly believe I am and trying to figure out, like, I hear the voice, but I don't know where it's coming from, but I hear it. And that keeping me awake at night, while the other side of me trying to be practical, and the identity that I had formed that was inauthentic was just trying to hold on for dear life. So that internal battle, that conflict I had inside of me, I think happens at multiple points in life. This was the most aggressive version of that for me. But that's what that was. It was just the authentic voice in me just had enough, and it was screaming at everything else in me like, stop. You are not living your life with purpose. You need to do something different. So hopefully that describes that emptiness a little bit, but that's what that felt like.
Yes, that was a very good description. And we did go deep on that, which I love. And I have a hunch that a lot of people are feeling that to some level, and some are earlier on in the process than later, which is sometimes more clear later on. And early on, it might just be some anxiety or some depression or just some negative feelings. They don't know exactly what's causing it, but as it matures, you start to identify what's really going on. And that's, I talk a lot about just being mindful, the mindfulness aspect of like, well, okay, you feel this way, but why are you feeling that way? Like, let's talk about it. Let's identify, pay attention to our feelings, because feelings can often be some guidance, some kind of guardrails, I guess, kind of, walking us into the right pathway. And I would say to anybody out there, and let me know if you agree, but if you have, especially if you're younger, 20s, early 20s, even younger than that, if you have this goal, like this is what I'm going to be when I grow up, right? This is what I'm going to do. I would challenge you to dive a lot deeper into, don't let that be just skin deep, because I bet you if you really dove in, you would find that you're wanting to do this because you think it provides something else. And that's really what you want. But what you're saying you want to be when you grow up is just a means to that end. And there might be a shorter path to what you really want. For example, let's just say somebody wants to be a photographer for outdoor magazine or something, right? Travel the world, take pictures. But they know that initially there's not a lot of money in that. And so they're like, okay, well, I got to go start a business, be an entrepreneur and sell it and make a bunch of money so that I can go do this. It's just kind of a bad example. But my example is
it's a great example.
Be careful. Like you got to dive in. And I had a guest on a while back that he had a very, he did this often. He would ask himself why, like 10 times. Okay, why do you want to be a businessman? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Why? Like really dive in. Like, and usually through that exercise, you can get down like, well, I don't even want to be a real estate investor. I just want the passive income so I can go do this, which I think is very common. A lot of people won't admit it. They want to be able to run around on social media saying they love real estate, which I mean, even me, like I love the power of real estate and the ability, 100%. the just the power to build wealth and to create wealth out of thin air. Oftentimes when you force appreciation on a deal, that is like this wealth that just comes out of nowhere. That's so powerful to me. But at the end of the day, like an underwriting a multifamily deal, it just bores me to death. And I'm just like, this isn't what I'm passionate about, but I know that this is a good way to start freeing me up so that I can do other things that I'm passionate about. And I think a lot of people have a lot of anxiety and just heartache because they're doing things because they think it's going to get them somewhere, or they just don't fully understand what's going on with their emotions. Am I making sense? Is that you see that as you, with this community that you're in, as you're kind of walking people through that journey?
So to that point, 1,000%, you and your examples were spot on as well. So there's a guy that I've had the privilege of getting to know, through the Gobundance Mastermind. He is a twice Emmy nominated writer. Been a writer for 21 years. He's been on the show The Family Guy. His name is Mark Henteman. You can look him up. He's a real estate investor. Mm-hmm. He's got a great company, Quantum Capital. Look that up. Awesome guy, awesome company. Yep. But he's also a writer for The Family Guy. And I love extracting wisdom from guys that are at the top of their game. Right? That's one of the biggest shows in the history of television. And he's been on it he was a showrunner at one point. He ran the whole show. So his point to me, and I think it's exactly what you were saying, was, man, I don't know. Like, I just knew I wanted to write comedy when I was 16, 17. I just wanted to write comedy. I loved writing comedy. So eventually he moved to New York and he would write every day. He would just write. Like, he's like, I was a little bit unique, I learned, in how I got to where I am because of, I would go and write. And he's like, I had a writing partner who was a better writer than me, but like, he was done at 4:00. I'm writing till 11 o'clock, midnight. Like I wrote and wrote and wrote every day. And then, I'd send it out, to different agencies or whatever to take a look at it. But he would just write. He's like, in my mind, I want to be a writer. Well, writers write. But when he got to LA, he wrote for Letterman for a while, and then eventually for The Family Guy. And when he got to LA, he made the point that he would see how unique his path was. And it blew his mind. and not in a judgmental way. He wasn't being judgmental. He's like, oh, I guess maybe I did it wrong. I don't know. But everyone else, to your point, wanted to be a writer. So what they did was they moved to LA and they took a job as this and a job as an apprentice, and they did this and they did that. And they would never write, right? Because they were trying to get to the right people in the right situation to then allow them to write, where he just wrote. And when he wrote and wrote and wrote, it became, his career was formed out of it. And I think that's the example you gave of, I want to go travel Europe and take photos, but I got to do all these things first. It's like, no, go travel Europe and take photos, right? And then figure out how that builds toward whatever your life will be.
Yeah.
I think all of us have this internal whisper, this thing that directs us, that guides us. It's an intuition, right? We have it generally, but we also have it, I think, in an entrepreneurial sense. Some of us can be entrepreneurs in the standpoint of we can build small businesses and operate there. Some of us can, we have no choice but to scale to 200 people in a company and 5 billion and whatever, right? The different levels of entrepreneur. But we all have that whisper. And when we hear it, it varies for each of us. So the hardest thing for me has been, my whisper came in my late 30s, right? Early 40s, this whisper that became too loud for me to ignore and take action on it. But for somebody like Mark at 16, he knew exactly. The whisper was loud enough for him to hear it, right? And my biggest thing is, man, I wish I had the whisper at 16 versus at 38. But you got to respect your own journey in that regard.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I think you're talking about. Is I think people put and I believe a lot of it is because of, how am I going to explain this to other people around me? I want to be a writer. Okay, so I'm going to go get a job and this, that, and the other. And other people look at you and say, okay, that makes sense to me, so I won't challenge you on it. And that's all we want, right? As opposed to, I'm going to go write, or I'm going to go travel Europe. Well, how are you going to make money? How are you going to do this? How are you going to have health insurance? What if you hurt yourself? What if you get stuck in Croatia during what, you don't want all that because you don't know how to answer it, right? Yeah. So a lot of that modifying that you talked about, I believe, comes from fear of judgment, from abdicating, your desire to the will of others, which we all do at different levels and in different ways.
Yeah, and I think there's, for anybody listening, whatever assumptions you're making about the possibility of you taking a certain path, I would challenge those assumptions. Most of the time, they're totally made up in your mind based off of other things that you've been taught or you hear in the culture around you and the society around you. Especially today, because with social media and YouTube and all this stuff out there, you can make money doing almost anything. 35, 40 years ago, it would have been tough to get the attention you need to make money, teaching people how to blog or whatever. It's a world where, don't say, well, I can't make money in that, so I'll go do something else until I can do that. I figure out how to make money in whatever it is that you're passionate about, and don't ignore that calling or what you feel like is your pathway. Because I think, you're eventually going to end up there eventually, but because that's where you're supposed to be, but you could probably take a more direct path, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure. 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell us more about, the Gobundance group that you're a part of, that you mentioned a new part of that where it's for people that maybe don't necessarily qualify for the main Gobundance group. Tell us more about that group and how people can learn more.
Yeah, sure. So on that path, just something that you brought up that was interesting. The idea is, you choose something. Look, if you're a 35-year-old somebody, out there thinking this really hits me. I'm kind of feeling a little bit empty about work or whatever, right? The big thing I got when I left my job, everybody kept saying to me, man, 40-year-old guys that are in the same type of position as me, I don't know what I would do. There was an envy, and to some extent, I don't mean that in a bad way, but man, I wish I could just go do things on my own. I just don't know what I would even do. And they think about what's the thing that I would do, the perfect thing. And I'm sure somebody listening right now is trying to think of that, this, but no, but maybe this, but what? And my challenge to anybody, and what I learned from going through this myself, was I just did what I thought was the right thing next, which was buying real estate. So, okay, I'll go into real estate. And then from real estate, I learned that this little part I really like, this community building thing. So I'll go into real estate meetups and build a real estate meetup. And we made it bigger and national and all that stuff. And I was like, man, I like the community thing, but I really like more of a mindset related topic, which led me to, the Gobundance Emerge and Gobundance Ascend programs that I'll talk about right now. But the point is like, you don't, this isn't like you make a decision that you found the perfect thing for you that's perfectly on purpose for you to build a side hustle and then leave. It's like build the first side hustle and then let that direct you to wherever you feel the most value you can provide is and feels like aligned with what your gifts and your abilities are. And that's how you can exit. So for me, it was this Emerge and Ascend program. Emerge was built to be, and it is, a 12-week goal setting sort of online course with a mastermind wrapped around it. And there were 3 objectives that I wanted for it. One was to create transformation. So people that go through Emerge, they join, they set a goal for the end of the 12 weeks of the program. And every week there's assignments and curriculum and content and tools to help them achieve that goal. And of course, there's the community of people holding them accountable to achieving that goal. So transformation was the first objective. The second was proximity. Most of us need to be around people that are like-minded. So I wanted this to be a place where somebody who's driving toward a bigger life, toward trying to be financially free, could be around other people in that same boat who get like the imagine when of life, not just people in your regular network who all talk to you about remember when, right? So I wanted them to have proximity to each other, but also proximity to the all of the millionaires of Gobundance. So every week we bring one in and does a Q&A with the group. So proximity was the second objective. And then the third objective was I wanted to make this Emerge program sort of a proving ground for whether or not people are truly committed. Anybody can buy a 12-week course. And by week 4, you've completely given up on it. Like, this happened, that happened, it's all done. So our mandate is you don't have to meet the goal you set by the end of the 12 weeks. That's some do, some don't, but everybody, I shouldn't say most, but everybody learns something about themselves. Either I set the goal too big, I didn't set it big enough, or I learned maybe that wasn't truly the goal I wanted. But you do have to complete all 12 assignments on time. So every week there's an assignment. So those that complete all 12 assignments get the offer to join Ascend, which is an annual mastermind. We have group coaching. We have speakers like Preston Smiles, Dr. John DeMartini just spoke to us, Tony Watley, David Osborne, and many, many others that come in and speak to us. Again, we have the monthly group coaching that help people identify their mission, their values, their priorities. That's the root of what we're trying to do with the coaching. And there's the community and accountability through accountability pods that we form. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that just helps these people who've proven that they're driven and committed through the Emerge program to then go on to something bigger, more community-based that they can dive deeper with, figure out what their purpose in life is, and accelerate themselves to what we like to call whole life millionaire status. Yes, financially, but also in your health, also in your relationships, also in your spirituality, in your contribution, and everything in between. So that's what we've built with Emerge and Ascend. Very, very proud of it. And boy, my energy in dealing with that was enough for me to say, time to go. I got to put the job behind me and see where this goes.
That's a good indicator when you can't really get tired of doing something, right? It's you don't get bored with it. You don't have trouble, getting up early to do it. Like that's a good signal that you're on the right path. That's awesome. And I want to jump back. You mentioned a little bit about like people maybe not knowing like what they should be doing or what they would even jump to. Cause there's a big push right now, like on social media. And not that I disagree with it, but I'm always careful explaining it. Like everybody wants to financial independence, retire early, right? There's this whole movement out there, which I think is I think it's one of those things where people don't mean what they say when they want to retire early, because I think they just want to be doing something else that they're more passionate about, I think is what they mean. And so talk to us about having something, if somebody's currently in a job, they know it's not necessarily their long-term destination or where they should be. Like, how do they have something to look forward to, or something? How do they build something that they can move toward pulling them out of that job and moving them into the next phase of their life? How do they kind of make that transition?
I think that's one of the most important things to do. Is if you just hate your job and want to walk away from it, that is not a healthy way, in my opinion, for you to exit your job and for it to be sustainable, right? I just think that you have to have, like you just said, something to move toward versus just running away from something.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is this, if you're looking to exit your job, no matter what you're going to do, build online courses, buy real estate, build a podcast, whatever it is you want to do, create an Etsy store, you're going to build a business, right? No matter what. Even real estate is not like I bought a house, like you're buying businesses, right? And when you do all of that. So the first thing is I would reframe what you view your job as. Most of us look at our job, and I did for a point in time, as this sort of burdensome, loathsome thing that I've got to deal with and get away from. But the reality is most of us work for profitable and functional companies. So what do their processes look like? How do they execute on that? How do they make decisions? What's their governance setup look like? How do they structure themselves from a business perspective? What operating systems are in place? What do they use? What do they use software wise to make sure that everybody in the company is aligned on certain protocols or processes or SOPs, right? Like start looking at that. I don't take anything from your company like proprietary stuff.
Right.
Start looking at how things are set up and structured as wisdom for how you want to build your business. Because if you're just like, no, please don't, get away job, and then you jump, you're giving up a treasure trove of years, maybe decades, maybe centuries in some cases, depending on the company you work for, of knowledge that's right there. Like, go ahead, write a process for your new company. Like, well, what do I put in step one? How descriptive do I get? Go look at your internal company processes and see what they do. What's the format look like? How descriptive are they? What images do they capture in there to make sure people know exactly what to do? How do they follow up on it, right? Like, so leverage what you have, because if you're exiting without winning the lottery, you're creating a business one way or another. Whether you want to believe that or not, you're going to create a business in doing so, even if it's just your own business. But look at what you have and use it as a positive versus looking at it as a negative. So reframe. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is make a list of things that you think you would really enjoy doing. Like, what are your gifts? What are the things that you like? And don't audit this. Like, if you're a great connector, write down connector. If you are, awesome with your hands, like I can build tree houses, then build tree house. Like, write down all the skills you have, and then figure out which one of these sounds like it would be pretty cool to do, and start researching it. So the ridiculous example of building tree houses, if you Google that, I'll bet you'll find a niche, an area, an opportunity where tree houses can be a business. I don't know exactly what. Maybe build them as Airbnb experiences. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that could be a business. And then just start something, right? And like I said before, for me, it was I'm buying real estate. And thankfully, we finagled together some money and, took out a loan here or whatever. And we bought a couple duplexes and we're like, yeah, we're really important. We're really good here. We're continue to build. And we bought our multifamily property and everything. And I have no regrets in any of it. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have learned what I like about real estate. And if I didn't take that next step, I wouldn't have learned about the community part that I talked about. And that wouldn't have led me to, being part of a group like Gobundance, and then learning from Gobundance that they have an opportunity for me to take on. And that being where I feel right now on purpose. That may change in 5 years. It probably will.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to decide what it is you want to try to do. Understand that this is likely a longer, like a 2-year sort of thing, a journey you're going to have to go on of building a side hustle. And let yourself pivot. That's the other part. Don't be so locked into, I made this decision, I'm going to do this. If it's just aching, if it's breaking you inside, like, I built something that I hate. Now I got my job that I hate. Now I hate this as well. Pivot, move, like figure out what you do like about it and like zero in on that little 5% piece and make that your 100%. And then from that, get rid of the 80% you don't like and take that 20% and make that your 100%. Before you know it, you'll be able to look at what you're doing now, route it back 2 years to what you started as, and see like, wow, if I didn't take crappy step 1, it wouldn't have led to amazing step 5. So I think you have to go through that in order to get there. So reframe your job as a positive and then start doing something, anything. I always say ready, fire, aim, right? Like just get it out there and then figure out afterward where you're going to aim yourself, right? You got to start. And that can haunt certain personality types, or might be tough for certain personality types. But running away from my job would have been a bad thing. But stepping away with gratitude in my heart and giving them plenty of time to replace me and everything else was easy because I just had something I wanted to go toward. I had no hate in my heart for the job or the people that were there. It was great. 2 years prior or 3 years prior, I would have left just out of pain. And that's never good. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. I think that is some sound advice for sure. So if for somebody that is just getting into real estate and they realize that maybe real estate's their thing, or maybe they like a lot of people, maybe they're going to use real estate to get to their thing, their passion. What is one of the best pieces of advice you could give to somebody that's just trying to get started in real estate, whether they're going single family or multifamily? What advice would you give them?
Got to network. I think networking is absolutely essential, and networking has to be consistent. Don't go to one real estate meetup and then go the next month and be like, nothing's happening, so I'm not going to go anymore. Like, if you show up consistently, things will happen. 6, 8, 9, 10 months. Make a call a week to somebody that you message people, offer value, offer them a specific value. Like, hey, I'm really good with SEO. Can I help you in your company? If I can help you in your company, your real estate company at all with SEO, let me know. I'd love to do that if you don't mind just letting me kind of get a peek behind the curtain of your real estate business. So be really specific in what you're offering. Otherwise, you're burdening the other person with having to come up with how you can add value to them, right? Like, how can I add value to you is a terrible question. I've asked it. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, oh, okay, well, I need back massages from, like, I don't know. But if you say to me, hey, I'm really great with digital marketing, I'd be like, oh, digital marketing, huh? Without having to pay for it, I could use you for digital marketing, and you just want to come with me on a flip or come check out my apartment building. Yeah. So network, offer value, find mentors in that regard, and continue to network with one another. I think those are the two biggest things people can do when they're just starting out and brand new that I think people understand, but they don't consistently do. So get out there and meet people.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've found. And I think you kind of alluded to this early on. The community around the real estate investing was something that was intriguing to you and attractive. And I think that's because for whatever reason, I know it's not for everybody, but it seems like at least the group that I kind of started to get in with as I learned about, Bigger Pockets and other groups that are out there, I'm like, man, everybody seems to have these big goals and awesome drive and ethics. And I was like, man, this is cool to be a part of a group of ladies and men that have just this drive. I didn't have that in some of my other networks that I was a part of. So I'm like, that was very intriguing to me. So yeah, networking, you'll be surprised with how other people can carry you and lift you along as you network with them, not just mindset wise, but also, deals and funding and, contractors. Like it's incredibly helpful to have that network, which I believe that's kind of why you started the meetup, right? The Multifamily and More. We don't have time to go into all of that, but that's obviously been a big help for you, finding deals, being successful in the real estate side, and then helping others do the same, right? It's just been huge.
Never bought a deal from a broker. It's all been through networking with Multifamily and More. Yeah. So no, 100%. That is key. You just mentioned it. Proximity is power. You need to be around the people doing the things you want to do. Denzel Washington said it. Like, if you hang out with 4 idiots, you'll be the 5th idiot, right? You hang out with 4 real estate investors, you'll be the 5th real estate investor. It just happens. It's human nature. People don't like to be disconnected from their tribe. That's kind of like, primal. So if you are if you're trying to be thin and healthy and you're with people who are overweight and obese and unhealthy, you don't want to stand out. There's actually studies, not to get too down a rabbit hole, studies about people that are obese that hang out with people that are more obese, feeling as though they're healthy because they're not as obese as the other person, right? They don't understand that they're in this community. They don't want to stand out from that. So you want to be healthy, you hang out with healthy people, right? You want to be a real estate investor, you hang out with real estate investors. You will naturally, as a community-based being, as a tribal being, you will naturally sort of move toward the rest of the community you put yourself in. That could be good or that could be bad. So being intentional about to join Gobundance, I pay thousands of dollars a year to be in Gobundance, right? Mm-hmm. Thousands and thousands. With trips and everything, I'm probably at $20,000 a year I spend on Gobundance just to be part of people, right? Yeah. And the guys that are way more successful than me, they spend 5, 6, 10x that a year just to be around the right people, the people that can drive them, and the people that they want to be like, if you will. So yeah, community and networking is so underrated in my opinion, and it's essential as long as you're consistent with it.
That's huge. What habit or characteristic separates those, especially as you've coached people and as you've been around the Gobundance group, what habit or characteristic separates those that succeed in what they're trying to do and those that struggle?
It's how teachable people are. So I've interacted with a guy like David Osborne. He wrote a book called Wealth Can't Wait. I've stayed at his house for God's sake. So he's net worth 150 plus million, right? Private jet, the whole nine.
Yeah.
And he asks me questions and then listens. He's truly curious to learn from me, which you would think like where he is on the socioeconomic ladder and where I am, like I am ears open and listening to everything he has to say. But he is truly curious. Another guy that is a very successful guy that's in Gobundance, his name is Pat Hyben. He wrote a book called 6 Steps to 7 Figures. I remember him at dinner. Somebody said, "Oh, we use this new app for payment now." This is during COVID. And he's like, "Oh, what's the app?" And he's asking and engaging with the server on this because, hey, is this something I can invest in? Like, oh, I want to learn about it. And he was down a rabbit hole, like curious and teachable by far. When I hear people, and I look, we all do it at times. When I hear people go like, they say something and then, I might, or you might say something to them that's like, well, something to think about is this. And they go, yeah, no, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. It's like, that's right away. Your mind is closed off. You're not teachable. Maybe you did do that, but just remain open and ingest the information. It may hit you a little differently from a different source, but being teachable easily is the one thing that I've learned from these guys that are uber successful, that they embrace, and that curiosity is huge.
Yeah.
So
love that. That's perfect. So now looking at it from a different point of view, what is the most common mindset roadblock that you see getting in the way of people succeeding?
I could say this for me, and I hear this from a lot of people, and I'll give you this. So I went to an event for Gobundance where there's two divisions. There's like the ultra rich, and then there's like the low level millionaire like me. And I happened to be a fly on the wall in that room, and there was this slide that was put up like regrets of the dying, and the first one was that I don't live life authentically, that I allow others to kind of drive my life. Second one was I work too hard, and then it kind of went down from there. And then they asked in the room, like, hey, okay, who, number one, not living life authentically, living life by somebody else's rules or whatever. How many people, that's their number one regret they fear when they die? And I raised my hand. And then I looked around the room and saw no other hand up in this room of very, very successful men, right? They all raised their hand on number two, working too hard. They didn't raise their hand on number one. And that to me was very telling. I think the biggest mindset block that I faced and that many of us face is that we don't feel like we're enough. We don't feel like we are deserving of success in some ways. We have this imposter syndrome. We're intimidated by those that are more successful. We compare ourselves to people that are doing things bigger than us and just hating on ourselves a little bit. So I think it's just an imposter syndrome. Deserving us because of one reason or another. So I think that's the biggest mindset block is you do belong, you can succeed, you can have everything you want. It's just a matter of, allowing yourself to be the person that does the things to make the money or have the life or do whatever it is that you want. So
I love that. That is powerful. Another question, what book would you recommend for those trying to succeed, live the life that they want, change their life? What book really stands out for you?
Easily Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. So everybody knows Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Outwitting the Devil. It was written back in the Think and Grow Rich days, but was too controversial to print. They actually published it in like the late 2010s or early 2000s or whatever. And it is an interview between Napoleon Hill and the devil, which means essentially it's him talking to himself. And it talks about the concept of people being drifters and how that's truly the devil's worst doing, is not burning in hell and making you kill people, but it's that you don't live into your full potential. And I think that's a great book to kind of get
Love
you
that.
unstuck a little bit.
I have heard that, and I've heard of that book, and I'm probably a third of the way through it on my Audible account. So
I heard it's like a demonic sound on the Audible. Is they read it like a deep devil voice kind of thing?
I think there's some like acting or whatever, if I remember right. Yeah, I don't remember why I stopped. I obviously got distracted with a different book. I started drifting, I guess. I don't know, but I need to go back and finish that book. Oh, that's a good reminder. Appreciate that. Sure. So another question. This is a new segment for the podcast that we're testing out. It's kind of, I see there's a lot of paradoxes out there in the success training and success in real estate world where I feel like they need to be addressed or clarified. For example, sometimes you'll see, you'll see slow down and enjoy the journey. But then you'll see Elon Musk saying, no, you got to work 100-hour weeks. If I work 100-hour weeks and you work 40, who do you think is going to win? Right. So there's this okay, well, let's talk about those, because I don't think either one is wrong. And I don't think that, but I do think we need to talk about what they mean and what they are in context. So I think one that fits very nicely along with our conversation is there's a lot of talk about, if everybody knows the quote of, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? But then you have others where it's just like, you just have to grin and bear it, grind it, hustle out, whether you like it or not, you have to do it. Grant Cardone says, get good at what you hate first, right? Which again, as I think is there's going to be things that you have to do that you don't want to do to some regard. And you have Gary Vaynerchuk saying, don't waste any time doing stuff that you're not passionate about. So that's the paradox I think is sometimes painted on social media. Where do you stand? How do you kind of explain that to our listeners?
That's a great question. And what comes to mind for me is I believe in the concept of who, not how. Great book, actually, by Dr. Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan, strategic coach guy, Who Not How. So the title says it all. I do think there's inevitably things you want to do that you'd rather not do. And look, I mean, this could be anything from, do I want to go sit in the rain and mud watching my 6-year-old play soccer? No, I want to go on a nice sunny day and watch him play soccer, right? But there's things you do because you should, and it's the right thing for the other person. Yeah. But in the context of your work, are there calls you have to make? Are there people you need to terminate? Of course, there's going to be those things. But I think it needs to be within a framework of something that you have true passion for, something that embraces your gifts and something that aligns with your values. I do believe that, and again, I'm a big fan of John DeMartini. He has a bunch of exercises on this. I do believe that if you outline all the stuff that you're doing in a given day, like very specifically, and figure out which of those don't, add value to you, don't monetize or cost you money for that matter, and that you just screech to a halt before you do, like, I'll do that later or whatever, right? Figuring out how you can hire that out and get that off on somebody else or partner with somebody that's great. You mentioned real estate. Like, if I don't like underwriting, and I don't, I'd rather get a guy and partner with him and take 50% of everything. Let him underwrite. He loves underwriting, and let me deal with investors if that's what I like. If I like the interaction and networking, right? So I think that I think it's a little overly, woo-woo to think that you'll never do anything you don't want to do. But I believe in aspiration. I believe in the idea that why wouldn't you aspire to that? Why not try to get to a place where nothing I do is, or everything I do, I want to do. I'm so excited about doing, right? Even if you get to 97%, that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, man, I mean, there's so many sites with valid, viable options for you to hire a virtual assistant for dollars, right? It's not expensive to have people in your life. I don't do laundry. We hire that. We don't mow our own grass. We hire that, right? We don't clean our house. We hire that. Cooking food is the next iteration. We'll hire that. There's things in your life that you can find a way to offload. And I would just say, whenever you do approach something you don't want to do, and if it's not something you have to do, and most of it isn't, figure out who can, and then figure out the right role for somebody else, whether it's an equity partner in your business, it's somebody that you hire, it's somebody that you already have on your employee who's really good at that, and you can delegate that to them. So I think for me, it's aspire to do nothing you don't want to. I think that's the right way to put it. Mm-hmm. Understanding that that's not probably realistic, but I do think more people ask themselves, okay, I want to do this. How do I? As opposed to, I want to do this. Who do I need to connect with, or who do I need to bring into my world in order for that to happen? So I think that's the first thing, is ask yourself the question of who versus how.
Yeah. And I'll add just one thing to that. And I think that's a perfect explanation of it. And I would be back up to that. Like, everybody wants to retire early and be financially free and stuff. Sometimes people are approaching that because they feel like if they're financially free, they'll never have to do anything they don't want to do again, or that all obstacles and challenges in their life will be removed. And I don't believe that. I don't think anybody truly wants a life where there's not problems to solve, because
there you go.
Happiness, according to Mark Manson, he talks about happiness comes from solving problems and overcoming obstacles and figuring out how you can no longer have to mow your lawn anymore or do stuff you don't want to do. That's, I think, where the value and this achievement and the learning and the growth comes from. So we have to be careful not to build a life where we're never having to have any challenges or stuff that we don't want to do, because I don't think there's any growth in that. But ultimately focusing on removing stuff that's not necessarily the best use of your time, and because you don't want to do it, so that you can do other things and choose the obstacles you want to try and figure out. And if that's climbing Mount Everest, if that's your choice, then you might have to have somebody mow your lawn so that you have time to go to Tibet or wherever and climb that mountain. So I think that's a perfect explanation, breakdown of that paradox. I appreciate that. Jamie, this has been awesome. Where can people learn more about you and follow along your journey?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff on Instagram around leaving your job, even down to like what health insurance did you select? So you could follow me there, and really anybody at the Jamie Gruber. I have a YouTube channel as well, Facebook page, all that good stuff. So at the Jamie Gruber. And if anybody's interested in the Emerge program, you can go to gobundance.com/emerge and check out the program. And you can always DM me on Instagram if you have any further questions, and I can either jump on a call or hook you up with somebody that can explain it a little bit further to you. But that's probably the best way.
Perfect. Jamie, this has been a great conversation. I learned a ton. Hopefully the listeners did too. Appreciate your time, taking some time to be on with us. Thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Money Maven Project podcast. A true Maven shares knowledge with others. So be sure to share this podcast and leave a review. Thanks so much. And until next time, live life with intention.